I want you and this entire trash heap gone by the end of the month. That is not a request. Ma'am, I'd appreciate it if we could talk about this calmly. Calmly, I sent 3 lawyers to your porch with a 90-day notice. I remember. You stood there in some ridiculous black robe like a crazy person. Didn't say a word. Now those lawyers won't even return my call. That wasn't a costume, ma'am. Then what was it? Dead silence. I just looked at her. My judicial robes. She'd spent 6 months trying to bully me off my grandfather's land. You're what? 22 years on the Virginia Circuit Court bench. One of your lawyers argued a case in front of me last year. He lost. She had no idea what I was about to do to her. My name is Garrett Hollowell, and the land under my boots has been in my family since before the Korean War started. My grandfather, Everett, bought those 47 acres in the spring of 1946, 3 years after Europe, wanting only quiet dirt and honest work. He built the farmhouse himself, white clapboard, wraparound porch facing east, and planted apple trees along the south slope the following year. Galas, Honeycrisps, a row of Arkansas blacks that still fruit every October. I grew up running through those orchards. My dad took the land over in 1971. I left for UVA law, became a prosecutor, and eventually got appointed to the circuit court. I served 22 years and saw every flavor of petty cruelty one person can inflict on another through paperwork. My wife Elena loved this place more than I did. She planted lavender along the fence line, said it reminded her of her grandmother's kitchen. The lavender still blooms every June. Elena doesn't. She died of pancreatic cancer 4 years ago, 41 days from diagnosis to funeral. I retired the day after they lowered her casket and moved onto the land full-time. That's what I was doing when Sterling Ridge Estates arrived. 6 years ago, the dairy farm next door sold to a developer. Within 18 months, the pastures were gone, replaced by 93 houses, an HOA rulebook thicker than the county code, and a clubhouse that looked like a Marriott had a baby with a strip mall. Brenda Whitfield came with the development like mold comes with moisture, the HOA's first president, and she never let go. She rolled up in a pearl-white Escalade one afternoon while I was fixing fence posts and handed me a violation notice. My barn was an aesthetic disruption, my apple trees a pest hazard. I told her I wasn't in her HOA. She smiled with just her teeth. Honey, everyone on this road is under our jurisdiction now. 2 weeks later came a cream-colored letter from Kessler, Brandt and Associates. Sell within 90 days or face litigation, citing a term, adjacent parcel aesthetic compliance. I was fairly sure they'd invented on the spot. I filed it in the kitchen drawer next to Brenda's notices. The drawer was getting full. 3 days after that, a Lincoln Town car pulled into my driveway. 3 lawyers in gray suits climbed my porch steps. I was inside, trying on my old robes one last time before boxing them up, when the doorbell rang. Todd Hensley's rehearsed opening died the moment his eyes reached my face and recognized me. I'd ruled against him a year earlier in a nearly identical case, a developer trying to push a family off their land with a manufactured violation. I let the silence sit for 15 seconds. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Your Honor, he said, and they left in single file. That evening I called Gil Norwood, who'd farmed this valley since before Sterling Ridge existed. She's done that before, Garrett, he said. 3 families on this road sold because of her. The Pattersons, the Wellers, the Dunns. You're the last one standing. I looked out at the orchard, the sun setting behind the ridge in shades of copper and rust. Elena would have called it God showing off. Then I guess I'd better stand well, I said. Here's something most people don't realize. In Virginia, sending a legal threat letter with no factual basis can constitute abuse of process, a civil tort that lets the target sue for damages. Brenda's lawyers had just hand-delivered me a cause of action on cream-colored stationery. Some gifts come in expensive packaging. Brenda didn't slow down. She weaponized the bureaucracy instead, anonymous complaints to the county about a septic leak, a structurally compromised barn, an orchard harboring insect populations. 7 complaints, 4 agencies, 7 inspections, 7 results clearing me completely. One inspector actually told me my barn was built better than half the houses in Sterling Ridge. I started a binder. I labeled it Whitfield. It got thick fast. One evening after the fifth inspection, I sat on the porch with a glass of bourbon and watched the fireflies drift over the orchard. Elena used to sit right here in the rocker next to mine, bare feet on the rail, reading whatever novel she'd found at the library sale. The cushion still held the shape of her. I looked at the empty chair and said quietly, "What would you do, Elena?" I could almost hear her laugh, low and warm, and then say, "Honey, she picked the wrong porch." Filing false reports with a government agency is a misdemeanor in Virginia, up to $2,500 and a year in jail per complaint. She'd filed 7. I wasn't counting yet. I was keeping receipts, because the thing about paper trails is they work both ways. She was building hers, a narrative that my land was a public nuisance. I was building mine. The difference was that mine had truth in it. Then came the real blow, a rezoning notice from the County Planning Commission, agricultural to residential mixed use, proposed by Commissioner Darren Whitfield, Brenda's husband, who also owned Whitfield and Sons Construction, Sterling Ridge's primary contractor. My taxes would jump from $800 a year to roughly $14,000. Not a tax hike, a financial eviction. I drove to the public hearing and spoke calmly, citing 80 years of ownership and the conservation easement my father had filed in 1987. When Darren claimed no one was trying to push anyone off their land, I asked him, on the record, whether his construction firm held active contracts with Sterling Ridge. The room went courtroom quiet. The chair tabled the proposal. Driving home, I understood the shape of it. Brenda was the clipboard, the noise, the distraction. Darren was the one pulling the trigger. So I stopped being a judge and started being an investigator. A FOIA request turned up $4.2 million in Whitfield and Sons contracts with Sterling Ridge, contracts Darren had voted to approve without ever disclosing his interest, a direct violation of the state conflict of interest statute. Tammy Griggs, an actual HOA member, requested the association's financial books. Forensic accountant Lydia Crenshaw went through them and looked up over her glasses. Garrett. This isn't creative bookkeeping, this is embezzlement. $87,000 moved from the legal reserve with no vote, no minutes, no authorization, Jews' money spent on a personal vendetta. In the kill shot, Sterling Ridge's own CC and RS, Article 2, Section 1, the association's jurisdiction covered only lots within its recorded plat. My property had never been part of it. Every notice, every letter, every demand Brenda had ever issued was legally meaningless. And the 1987 conservation easement permanently protected 20 of my 47 acres from any development, making Darren's rezoning not just aggressive, but impossible. I built a 5-part plan. Lydia handled the money trail. I filed a formal complaint with the Virginia Judicial Inquiry and Review Commission over Darren's undisclosed conflicts, and a second with the State Bar over Kessler Brandt's baseless demand letter. I brought reporter Pete Salana a folder and told him to write the story only if there was one. 20 minutes later, "Judge, there's a hell of a story." And I went to my neighbors. Tammy had been fined $3,200 over 2 years for trash cans and a garage door left open. She wasn't alone. The Mercers fined for a garden gnome, the Coles for a basketball hoop, the Proctors for the wrong shade of beige. Virginia law let 25% of members demand a special meeting. I needed 12 signatures. I got 13. Brenda found out her neighbors were talking to me, and she didn't take it well. One morning my cattle were gone, 3 sections of fence cut clean, tracks leading straight onto Sterling Ridge's manicured lawns. Brenda called animal control before sunrise and sent a neighborhood-wide email calling it a dangerous livestock incident. I photographed everything and added it to the binder. Then came the whisper campaign that I was experiencing cognitive decline, unstable, a danger to the community, someone should really check on him. I'd spent 22 years reading witnesses. Brenda wasn't worried about my health. She was worried about her freedom. Then the road, 2 metal posts, and a rope strung across my grandfather's 1952 easement, hand-lettered with no unauthorized access. Blocking a recorded right-of-way is obstruction under Virginia law, a misdemeanor if intentional. The sheriff's deputy had it down before dinner. Brenda's second law firm arrived on cheaper paper Crawford Legal Solutions this time, not Kessler Brandt, which had quietly dropped the case after Todd Hensley's uncomfortable 45 seconds on my porch. Hiring a cheaper lawyer is an escalation, it's hemorrhaging. The letter read like it: final notice, sell within 30 days or face a civil nuisance lawsuit. I held it up to the window light, thin enough to see the shadow of the apple trees through it. I needed 3 more days. Darren scheduled an emergency planning commission vote for Tuesday, trying to ram the rezoning through before Sterling Ridge's Thursday annual meeting, and before my judicial inquiry complaint could catch up to him. It couldn't. Judge Clarice Petton, an old colleague, called to say the inquiry had already received my filing. Darren didn't know yet. That same week, Brenda held an emergency board meeting, 3 people, no quorum, no notice, and voted to move another $25,000 from the Treasury into a legal defense fund. Tammy was furious. I wasn't. Good, I told her. Let her take it. Every dollar's another count. Pete's story was locked and ready to run Monday. I spent Wednesday night assembling 47 packets: Lydia's audit, the highlighted CC and RS, the 1987 easement, the FOIA contracts, every false complaint, photographs of the cut fence and the illegal barricade, the petition with 13 signatures. I called Sheriff Boyd Cassell and asked him to be at the meeting. He said he would, and that he'd bring the paperwork I'd filed the week before. I looked at my old robes hanging in the closet, the black wool still smelling faintly of old courtrooms and wood polish. I didn't need them that night. I wasn't a judge. I was a plaintiff, a property owner, a grandson of a man who came home from war and built something that mattered. The loudest person in the room is almost never the most powerful one. The clubhouse smelled like cheap coffee and carpet cleaner, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. 38 of 47 households showed up. Word had spread that something was happening. Tammy and the other signatories sat scattered through the room, looking like regular residents at a boring annual meeting. Pete Solana sat in the back in flannel, notebook open, blending in. Sheriff Cassell stood near the door, hat under his arm. Brenda glanced at him, but assumed he was there for traffic. Brenda opened the meeting at 7 sharp, brisk and confident, the clipboard in her hand like a scepter, working through the agenda. When she tried to push public comment to the end, I stood. Under the bylaws, any member could raise a motion from the floor, and though I wasn't a member, 12 of hers had signed a petition demanding this discussion happen now. Tammy walked the signatures to the table. Brenda's jaw tightened. Fine, 10 minutes. I didn't need 10. Slide 1, the CC and RS, jurisdiction limited to the recorded plat. My land had never been inside it. Every notice she'd ever sent void. Slide 2, 7 false complaints, $15,000 in wasted taxpayer money. Slide 3, Lydia's audit, $87,000 misappropriated with no authorization. Slide 4, the emergency vote, 3 people, no quorum, another $25,000. Slide 5, Whitfield and Sons, $4.2 million in undisclosed contracts. Slide 6, the 1987 conservation easement. The rezoning had been legally impossible from the start. The room went silent, not an uncomfortable silence, but the kind that happens when 40 people realize, all at once, they've been lied to for 6 years. Darren shot to his feet, shouting that this was out of order. Sheriff Cassell told him to sit down. He sat. I pulled out the original 1946 deed, yellowed and creased, and held it up. This land was here before your subdivision, before your HOA, before your ambition. My grandfather bled for this country and came home to build something real on this soil. It will be here long after your plastic fences, your fake violations, and your stolen money are forgotten. The room erupted in applause. Sheriff Cassell walked to the front table. Mrs. Whitfield, I have a warrant for your arrest on charges of embezzlement, fraud, and misuse of fiduciary funds. Brenda's clipboard hit the floor. Darren dropped his phone, trying to call a lawyer, his third. Brenda was charged under Virginia Code Section 18.2111, facing 2 to 10 years. The forensic trail was too clean to fight. Darren was forced to recuse from the Planning Commission pending investigation, and the State Bar opened its own inquiry. Whitfield and Sons quietly withdrew from its pending contracts. The rezoning died on the table. Sterling Ridge held a special election 2 weeks later. Tammy Griggs won the presidency 34-3. Her first motions, a full 6-year audit, and reimbursement of every questionable fine, over $40,000 returned to families too afraid to push back before. The Proctors got a formal apology for their shutters and repainted them defiant blue anyway. I didn't sue Brenda personally. Instead, I took the HOA's insurance settlement and started the Elena Hollowell Community Legal Fund, offering free legal help to homeowners facing HOA abuse across Virginia. The first call came in before the website was even finished. That fall, I donated 5 acres along the property line to the county as a public trail, winding through old-growth oaks and ending at the edge of my orchard, with a small wooden sign, in memory of Elena Hollowell, who believed that land should bring people together. That October, I hosted the first Hollowell Harvest Festival, long tables under the apple trees, fresh cider, a bluegrass trio, kids from Sterling Ridge chasing each other through the rows, while their parents finally got to know neighbors they'd been too scared to talk to for 6 years. Gil showed up with a bottle of bourbon older than Sterling Ridge itself, and we sat on the porch after everyone left, watching the stars over the Blue Ridge the way people had from that porch for 8 decades. Everett would have been proud, Gil said. I thought about my grandfather who built something from nothing, my father who preserved it, Elena who loved it. You would have told me I took too long, I said. Gil laughed. I did too. It felt good. In the clubhouse parking lot that night, someone noticed a pearl-white Escalade listed for sale at a steep discount, the seller relocating due to personal circumstances. I suppose that's one way to describe a pending felony trial. Brenda Whitfield spent 6 months treating her HOA presidency like a throne. She sent lawyers, filed false complaints, tried to rezone a man's land out from under him, and embezzled over $100,000 of her neighbor's money to fund a grudge, and never once stopped to ask who she was actually fighting. Garrett didn't win because he was a judge. He won because he was patient. He documented everything. He followed the process and let the law work the way it's supposed to work. That's the real lesson here. You don't need a robe to fight back. You need a binder, a pen, and the discipline to let someone dig their own grave. If you're in an HOA right now and someone on that board is abusing their power, remember this: they can only push you as far as you let them. Read the CC and RS, request the financials, know your rights. The rules protect you too if you know where to look. Has a story like this hit close to home?